Welcome to another edition of The Focus, PHNX Sports' newest series on which I'm joined by executives, managers, coaches, players, and journalists who have made a significant impact on the Valley and Arizona sports scene. Joining me today is a man who has the most wins in Coyotes coaching history and the guy who engineered that memorable 2012 playoff run, Dave Tippett. Tip, it's great to see you again. Welcome to the show.
Good to see you, Craig. Good to be back.
Thanks for coming down. I know you
my pleasure.
Had a drive this morning from Flagstaff, right?
Well, I always say I love being an Arizona resident, but now I'm up in Flagstaff as opposed to Scottsdale, so a little longer drive this morning.
We'll talk about that. It's been almost 2 years since you coached your last game. Tell me what you and Wendy and the family have been up to since then.
Well, it's been we've been building a house for actually we just moved in early December.
Right. Almost all that time, right?
Almost all that time, yeah. You know, it just reacquainting myself with my children and my grandchildren, and really kind of taking a step back from the sports world a little bit and enjoying life, getting off the schedule is what it's been.
Yeah. Do you miss it at all, or is it hard to adjust that schedule that you've been on for so long?
You know what? It takes some adjustment to get off it, but I think that's one of the reasons why I like it, because I was tired of it.
Yeah.
You know, it just 37 or 38 years of it is a long time, and to be able to, you know, on any given day go see my grandkids or go on a vacation or go golf somewhere is that's not bad.
Yeah. I know you love golf.
Yeah.
And we've talked about the sabbatical. You and I have talked about just about every aspect of your life at some point. But when you got to the end, did you just know? Did you just know it was time? How were you feeling it? What was going on mentally,
know what?
physically?
I thought that my coaching career had kind of wound down when I went to Seattle after I left here. When I left the Coyotes, I really did kind of feel burnt out from coaching, and got really enthused about helping Seattle, bring that team to Seattle, work with the people there. It was a lot of fun for a year. And then coaching in Edmonton in Canada, where I'd never played or coached, having the ability to work with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl was enticing, and went up there with great expectations, and it started well, and then the pandemic hit, and it was really, it was a struggle just with everything, you know, with family life, with quarantines, with bubble hockey, and you know, those years really took a toll, because I'd gone, at one point I went 6 months without seeing my wife. I didn't see my grandkids for over a year, so it gets. You love the game and you want to keep doing it, but after a while it's a grind for you.
All right, we'll get into those details in a minute. Tell me about your recently completed, somebody referred to it as a cottage in Flagstaff, but I don't think what you built in Flagstaff can be referred to as a cottage.
No, you know, I've always been into building and kind of some architecture stuff, so we owned a couple homes in Scottsdale, and built one about 10 years ago that we thought was our forever home, and ended up selling it and bought another one just kind of until we had this one built. But it's just about, I was looking to get more into back to nature. We bought a lot that backs up into the Coconino Forest, and I was laughing yesterday as I was talking to another hockey guy on the phone yesterday morning. I was watching some Kraken games on some video I had, and there was about 50 elk sitting right outside my office window, you know, of my house. So it's a little slower lifestyle, little quieter lifestyle for sure.
Is that why you chose that instead of the Valley, just to get away a little bit?
Yeah, just to, if truth be told, my wife really loves Arizona, and we lived in Scottsdale a long time. She's got a lot of friends, she was not crazy about leaving here, I don't think, although she likes the nature part of it too. I would have rather had 1,000 acres in Idaho or Wyoming or somewhere. So Flagstaff ended up being a nice kind of a landing spot for both of us. And we both enjoyed it, actually. We still enjoy the valley, and we get down here and see with friends and stuff. But the quiet and the nature and the excitement of building a new home, and we like doing those things and getting it up and running. So that's what we've been up to.
You've got some specialty rooms in this house.
There's I'm kind of a homebody, so I've got a shop in there for myself. Got a nice office. I got a golf simulator, all the little toys to keep me busy.
Don't just pass over the golf simulator. I didn't hear about that.
You know what? I've always seen these things. I haven't used them very much, but we ended up having a room. It was kind of a storage room, but I got them to put real high ceilings in it, and it's 20 feet by 14 feet. So the screen is 14 feet wide and 9 feet high, and put a little putting green in there and golf simulator. I've just got it going, actually. I just been at it for a couple of weeks. So I built it myself. So it was
wow.
It was a good project for me.
Too early to say whether it's having an impact on your game.
You know what? I only had it up and going for a couple of days, and then I went and golfed in Hawaii last week for 8 or 9 days, and played all right. Yeah. I wouldn't say I played great, but I played all right.
All right. You mentioned the shop as well. I know your love of motorcycles. I don't know if you're still building them or if you're just riding at this point. Or
you know what? I don't ride as much as I used to because I've got some arthritis and some issues with my right hand that really is. It becomes very painful with the vibration of them, but I still like tinkering on them. I built 2 right from the ground up. They were kind of in storage for a couple of years as we were going through the process of building this new house, but I've got the new shop up and going and tinker with them a little bit. I like to listen to them more than drive them now, but it keeps me busy.
Did you know that Andre Tourigny is a big motorcycle buff too?
No, I didn't know that.
Went on a big ride this summer from Quebec all the way down to Tennessee.
Wow,
so, yeah,
good for him. Yeah.
You guys should connect on this.
I still like to tinker on them a little bit, but I don't ride them as much as I used to.
Okay. Before we get into the meat of this interview, I want to go way back. The Coyotes just played in Carolina, and every time I walk into that building, into the press box, I walk past this row of team photos. And, of course, the Carolina Hurricanes used to be the Hartford Whalers. Yeah. And every time I go past, I see you somewhere in those photos with that spectacular mustache, the duster that you used to have.
There was a lot of guys with mustaches on that team.
Yeah, there were some good mustaches on that team. So as I told you, I went to school in Middletown. Used to go to Whalers games while you were playing there at the old Hartford Center, Hartford Civic Center, with unbelievable list of names too. Ronnie Francis, Sylvain Turgeon, Ray Ferraro, Kevin Dineen, Joel Quenneville, of course, Dean Evison, Mike Liute. What do you remember from that period of time playing in a little town like Hartford and trying to make NHL hockey work?
Well, I remember first and foremost, our general manager was Emile Francis, who was a great hockey man, honest as the day is long, and one of his main factors was we were a small market team. We had to be competitive. We had to be very open to the market and living in the market, doing charity work in the market, and that was kind of a staple of our team. That the players, the wives, the girlfriends, everybody was very engaged in the community, and there was I would say, a small market team, but it almost become a cult.
Yeah,
where
that's
people.
Fair.
My wife used to go to games, and she said, I would know about 4,000 people there. There was only 12,000 in the building. So it was a great time. And it's funny, like there's the core of that team has stayed very close. Like we travel with good friends. We got Mike Liute and his wife, Joel Quenneville and his wife, Ronnie Francis and his wife, Kevin Dineen and his wife, Alpi Samuelson and his wife. We all traveled together, different vacations around, and we spent last spring. We were in Naples, where Joel and his wife have a house there, so we spent a week there last year. All the old Whaler guys, and lots of old stories and lots of old nicknames, and
Yeah.
it's a really close group still, which is probably why those teams, I think, were competitive for small market teams, but that that culture that was built in Hartford was a real special culture.
What did day-to-day life look like there? For people who don't know, the Hartford Civic Center, there's literally a mall around the arena where you get it. I think you guys used to go up and either have lunch or beers.
Yeah. We'd practice in the morning and go to, there was I think it was called Chuck's or something like that upstairs.
Yeah.
And it was mandatory. Our whole team would, after practice, you'd see the whole Hartford Whalers sitting in the restaurant having lunch after. Now the new NHL lunch is brought to the dressing room and everything. Right. That was the old NHL.
It's such a great way of connecting, though.
Yeah.
Right? Like I remember going to games. My parents would come out to school. We'd go to games, and then between periods, you're not just getting something to eat, from the concession stand. You can go shopping.
Yeah.
Get clothing. It was just such a unique experience.
No, it was good. It's too bad because they're really, and I go back and play a golf tournament there every summer for a friend of mine, a charity golf tournament, and there's still, like, the amount of people that still love the old Whalers and hang around there is incredible. It's fun to go back there.
Yeah, I can still hum Brass Bonanza. So
yeah.
Dave, this show is going to air several weeks after we're taping, so who knows what will have transpired by then. What's your reaction to the fact that the Coyotes are still in this kind of limbo that they've been in? They were your entire tenure in Arizona. Yeah. They're still here all these years.
I haven't kept up on what's going on lately. I have never been to the new arena here. I've never been to a game there yet. I hear it's the atmosphere is excellent, and people that go are loving the small and quaintness of it. And ultimately, I think to be a legitimate NHL franchise, they're going to have to get a new building somewhere. I went through it for years and years, and it's. I said all along, as the Glendale Arena was a beautiful arena, but it's just logistics-wise, it's just hard to get. On a nightly basis for where you play, it's hard to get people to commute there. And so something over on the east side, I always thought would probably be the better solution, or close to downtown, or so whether that comes to fruition, I'm not sure. I don't know where the process stands right now. I after I went through about 10 or 11 orders, I said, I'm out. I'm not going to watch it anymore. So I don't know where things stand right now, but hopefully, I think that's the key. They have to find a place to get an legitimate NHL arena to play in, and if they do, I think there's plenty of hockey fans here. I think there's a passion for hockey in the Valley, and hopefully they can finally get to a situation where they can get stabilized.
You mentioned getting burned out. Was that part of it? That and the ownership instability, does that just wear on you after so many years?
I think it did. Like when I first came here, it was, it was in bankruptcy, but then we kind of got it going the right way, and there was an excitement. So it was, and for me, it was new and everything. But as you kind of go through it, and the first 3 or 4 years, when the league was running our team when I was here, I mean, Don Maloney came to me one time, and there had been, I don't know how many meetings Don and I had with potential owners or people sniffing around to buy it. And I remember Don said, when he wants, be careful what we wish for here. And because the league was here's your budget, here's what you do, and kind of hands off. But as, we went through more owners and a lot more people interviewing to be owners almost, I
think I talked to all of them.
Yeah, it does get to be, you get your hopes up, and then it goes the other way, and ultimately the ownership. I mean, you need good ownership, but ultimately it came down to the building and who could manufacture a building, either an agreement with Glendale, a legitimate agreement, or another building, and I think after a while that's what the fact that the ownership is changing, and it seemed like every time the ownership changed, it changed into a new rebuild. But after a while, you don't want to just rebuild; you want to have a chance.
Yeah,
and that's what became a grind. The rebuild after rebuild is frustrating for a coach.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't think anyone would argue at this point that you got the most out of what were limited rosters. But I remember you standing at the podium at one point and just saying, look, if we're going to take a step forward, the bottom line is we need better players.
I mean, you get to the point where, and we had some, I look back at some of those teams, veteran teams led by Shane, but, some players that kind of came through and became real good players. Like I look at Keith Yandel came through, and then we had Briz come through, Mike Smith come through, and we had some real competitive teams. But, ultimately to get to the goal of winning a Stanley Cup, you need to add to those a little bit, and we had a lot of great players come through here, people that loved playing here, people that were passionate about playing here, and we always tried to extract the most we could out of players, and players were more than willing to do whatever it took to try to make this work. But ultimately, to get to the top, you need to keep expanding that roster, and when you're rebuilding all the time, you just can't do that.
All right, let's go back to your arrival in the Valley in the wake of Wayne Gretzky's departure. I'm sure just getting another job after Dallas was clearly the motivation. But did you have any concerns at that point, knowing that, as you mentioned, just 4 months before, Jerry Moyes had put the team into bankruptcy and wanted to sell it to Jim Balsillie and move it to Hamilton?
Well, actually, when I left Dallas, I was going to take a year or two off. I had no plans to come here, and then had a couple calls from people around the league, and then Doan called me and came up. I was up at my house in Minnesota, just kind of taking it easy, and I met him up there, and I was very impressed with where he was and where he thought the thing could go, and very impressed that he wanted to bring some veteran players in and get competitive right away. And we knew it was going to be a challenge, but then the more I looked at it and how upbeat Doan was about it, that it was an exciting challenge, and and I think there was always hope. My wife tells a story all the time where Ulf Samuelsson had been the assistant coach here before, and Jeanette Samuelsson, his wife. I remember we had got here. We were here a couple of weeks, and there was a big rumor about, I think it was Reinsdorf. Reinsdorf is buying it. It's going to be done in 2 weeks. And Jeanette Samuelsson laughed at my wife.
By the way, 2 weeks.
Yeah, Jeanette Samuelsson laughed at my wife and just said, "Yeah, you'll see." So
the team the season before had 79 points. The year before you arrived, how on earth with that roster did you engineer the best point total in franchise history? 107 points in 2009-10. I look at the stats of that team. You didn't have any high goal scorers, any point producers. You look at that roster, Dave, and I think people would just say, no chance that's a 107-point team.
I look back, I think the two main factors of that team having the success that it did was, one, the goaltender Brizgalov, and two, the leadership of Shane Doan. And Shane, I say Shane because he was the captain, but then there was like Adrian Aucoin, Joe Bonoski. I mean, some real good veteran players there that I think they used the situation to galvanize themselves and make them a team. And the one thing we I look back at that, we played well as a team, and right to the point where Adrian Aucoin had 5 shootout wins,
the closer,
and never shot in the first 3, So there was some things that went right for our team, but ultimately, I think you look back, the goaltending was excellent, and Shane and the veteran leadership was a key factor to that.
As long as you mention Shane, and let's play a little what if here. The playoff series against Detroit. If he's healthy, what do you think happens in that series?
Well, he's a difference maker, and on a team where, like I said, we played well as a team, but we didn't have many difference makers, and he could have been a difference maker.
He was, and especially those first few games,
he had so much. Like he wanted to be in the playoffs so bad, and
finally there.
Yeah, finally there. But no, that the leadership that he brought all the way through all the years, and that was a good year. It was probably easier to be a leader that year, but the lean years there a little bit. The leadership that he still had was incredible, and that was, you talk about when I left, but that was kind of one of the last straws for me too. That Shane and Mike Smith were leaving, and it was going to get hard.
Yeah.
It was always hard, but it's going to get harder.
Yeah, it was definitely always hard.
Yeah.
We've talked about 2012 1,000 times. I wrote an entire story series on it, but it's genuinely the most entertaining season I've ever covered in the NHL. There was the run in February when you went unbeaten. There was that magic top line of Ray Whitney, Marty Hanzal, Radim Verbata. As you mentioned, the leadership, Shane Doan, Keith Yandel, Mike Smith's elite play. Postseason that had unbelievable storylines, starting with the Hawks, Rafi Torres, the Russians' night out in Scottsdale, Dustin Brown's infamous hit. What was your feeling about that group at the start of the season when you're going in? You're coming off 2 straight playoff appearances, but you've gone out in the first round to Detroit. What did you feel about that team starting it off?
Well, we always felt like we could keep building, and we were kind of adding some people there. Like Ray Whitney was a big add for us. Schmitty come in and playing the way he did we felt like that we were moving the right direction, and there was it was a winning attitude around our team. Every day was a winning attitude. It was a fun group. We had, again, a lot of veteran players, some young guys coming in still, but a lot of really solid veterans. But I remember like the year was going along okay, but we were kind of on that borderline, and I remember sitting down with Don Maloney, and he was we were looking at the schedule, we were looking at our point totals, and he's going like buyers, sellers, not sure. And we went, I looked at the schedule after the meeting with Don. I think we were playing in Los Angeles, and we went there the night before the game in Los Angeles. We had a meeting just kind of in a boardroom there, and it was Don and the coaches and all the players, and we put the schedule up, and we said, this is where we're at. This is how many points we're going to need. Can we do it? And everybody knew exactly where we stood and what we had to do, and that's when we took off on that run and went for a good run, and we're playing really well at the right time.
Did you know going into the playoffs then that you had a chance to make a run? I mean, you never know in the NHL playoffs, but did you feel like you had the ingredients?
We played a playoff style for so long.
Yeah.
That last couple months we were ready to go, and it was probably not a bad thing that we ended up against the defending champs. Like we were the underdog by a mile. But Schmitty was playing great, and we were playing well as a team. We were fairly healthy, and we went into that series where Schmitty had to be unbelievable at times, but we just had to hang around, and we found ways to win games. I remember I think the 6th game where we won.
Yeah. First playoff series win in Arizona for the Coyotes.
But I remember during the game, Chicago came out flying. And Joel was doubling up Taves and Kane, and they were coming so there's no matchups. We're just trying to hold on, But I remember John Anderson walked down, the assistant coach, John Anderson, walked down the bench. I think it was midway through the second period. He said, "Tipper, you realize the shots are 28-4?" And I said, "I'm well aware of that, John." and then we got the goal. It was right near the end of the second period. We got kind of a seeing eye goal that went through to get the lead, and we went into the second intermission with the lead and a chance to close the champs out. And we came out. I remember our best line in the third period was our fourth line. It was Chipchura and Langkow and Gilbert Brule.
Wow.
Right? And they had, I think that line had 2 goals in the third period. Ray Whitney had another big goal in the third period, but it was kind of fate for our team. Like we'd worked that hard so it was, it was fun time.
What do you remember about the whole Rafi Torres incident when he hit Hossa, knocked him out of the series, obviously?
I remember looking at it after, and I said, Rafi's a hard guy, and Hossa just got caught going the wrong way. And I think Rafi's, his identity or previous convictions.
Yes.
Were a factor in it. I remember. I mean, it was right in front of their bench, and my friend Joel's going wild, and their whole team's going wild, and I was trying to downplay it a little bit. In the press conference after the game, I went in and I kind of insinuated, "Well, I didn't think it was that bad," and trying to downplay it, and the Chicago media didn't like that very much.
I think Don Poloni probably took some of the pressure off you with his well-known quote. You remember what he said?
No, I don't.
Well, you think he would have killed? You think he just went out and killed a busload of children? That quote made the rounds in Chicago.
Well, I think at one point I mentioned is. Have you ever played the game Frogger? Where the guy jumps out and it's going the wrong way. He just got caught going the wrong way. But yeah, it added a little dimension to the series.
It sure did. Speaking of fate, when Derek Moore scores from the red line against LA in the conference final, did you think? I'm sitting up in the press box at that point thinking, this is crazy. This is fate. You knew how Jonathan Quick had been playing, and then suddenly gives up that goal. Did you think for a moment, with how well they were playing?
It was either fate or that's the end of it. I don't know. No, it was a competitive series against LA, but LA, they won the Stanley Cup for a reason. They were a real solid team right through, big and heavy team.
Rafi could have helped though, huh?
Yeah, Rafi would have been a factor in that series.
Mm. So you come off that season, Dave, and then of course in classic Coyotes fashion, you have a work stoppage. So whatever momentum you've built is gone. You got a new owner coming in, so things are changing. It's the same stuff we've gone through with this franchise a lot. And I don't want to rehash all of that. You and I have talked before. I think that might have killed some of the momentum of this franchise. But also, again, it's a lack of resources. How did it get to the point over the next few seasons where it was finally time? You mentioned losing Mike Smith and Shane Doan. Finally time for you to say goodbye on the eve of the 2017 draft in Chicago, where you and I were supposed to get together the next day. And then you were out as coach.
I just think there was a lot of things, a lot of moving parts behind the scenes. There was a lot of stuff going on with Shane. There was, like you say, ownership change again. It was just getting frustrating, and it was just a time where you just said, if I'm going to do it, I might as well do it early, and we'll get through it and move on. And it was, you become, I think you do, you become burnt out a little bit, and you're always trying to be the best you can be. And if you feel like you're not at your best, you probably should take a step back. So that's what I did.
Did the rest help recharge your batteries? And then what interests you in helping launch Seattle's expansion franchise?
You step away, and that summer I spent a lot of time with my kids and family at the lake and that, so it was a good summer. But then I got a call from Tim Lewicki, which is Todd Lewicki's brother, and asked if I would be interested in just giving them some thoughts from a hockey standpoint. They had a great crew set up to do the foundation of the building and the organization, but they were just looking for some hockey input. He asked if I would fly over to LA and meet with him and Jerry Bruckheimer and Todd Lewicki, he was going to up and run. And I went over there and met with those guys. There was just so much enthusiasm that it really intrigued me. Went home, and it just so happens that our oldest daughter, and the 3 grandkids live in Seattle, so that was a big seller too. They live just outside Seattle, but just I laughed because Todd Lewicki said, we were talking about building teams from a coaching standpoint, and I built houses, I built motorcycles, I built cars. How about try this one? And that's kind of what I like, building things, and that was one of those things that really intrigued me. Because
did you enjoy it?
It was, I really did, because it was more than, it was a hockey aspect, which was good, but like the new practice arena they have there, I designed all the dressing room. I'm a frustrated architect, I think at heart, but Ronnie Francis, the general manager there, and I'm doing some consulting for them now, and I was there in training camp. It was the first time I'd actually been in it. I'd had it on paper and worked with the architects and saw it when it was a mall before, and now it's a rink, and so some of that stuff, like there's the infrastructure stuff that I was part of. I'm very proud of, but I also really enjoyed it.
Yeah. How about Coachella Valley? Were you a part of that too?
I had narrowed it down to two places. I had done all the research on American League franchise, and we had to buy American League franchise from the AHL. Mm-hmm. And we were looking at Palm Springs, and we were looking at Boise up kind of in the northwest there, and they've run a very good ECHL team for a long time. Their arena there didn't have the ability to expand. I forget what it was, 4,000. They wanted to get a little bigger, and then we looked at Palm Springs, and there was a couple different sites in Palm Springs that they looked at. There was one that was an arena downtown that they looked at, and then after I left, they finally decided on Coachella out there. But it's as far as I know, I haven't been to a game there, but as far as I know, it's an excellent franchise. They've done very well so far.
Yeah, people seem to like the facility too. So with all that in mind, and I know you mentioned, I mean, what coach doesn't want to get the chance to work with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and as you mentioned, coaching in Canada. But with all that you had going there in Seattle, and a lot of people thought you could have done other things with that franchise as well. What drew you away back into coaching, back into the grind?
I don't know. It's I talked to Ken Holland a little bit, and he had a great reputation, veteran GM. Coaching in Canada. I know my family is still up there. It always was intrigued by me coming back to a Canadian team or doing something. So there was some of that. Yeah. The other thing that was a factor is when I went to Seattle, it was supposed to start a year earlier, and it got delayed because of arena stuff and that. So it was delayed, pushed out another year. So it came down to this: if I was going to if I ever wanted to coach again, this is it. And I didn't go to Seattle to coach. I had no desire to coach them. I was more in the infrastructure of the team and help build it. But then just when I weighed the situation and talked to Ken Holland a little bit and the plans that they had for their, just decided it was let's give this a try. And had I known the pandemic was about to hit, I probably would have stayed in Seattle.
Yeah. When it ended, did you know right away that was it? You were done. You were ready to walk away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, there was between missing my family and missing grandkids and missing so much for a couple of years. It was just, I was ready to walk away, and walked away and never looked back.
How much different is the game now than even 2012 when you were here?
Well, it continued. You see now, the game is faster, way more skill. Not that players weren't skilled, but it's some of the rule changes that were put in there, and I was involved in that back with the year-long lockout with that big summit within the league, and just some of the rules where can't change on icings. It limited you've got to have four lines that no matter what could play against anybody. There's the hook, the penalty, the hooking, holding stuff, the quickness and skill of players was allowed to evolve, and that's where the game is now. Like I watch games just about every night, and I'm amazed at the skill of all the players, not just a few of them, all the players, and the plays they make under pressure that go unnoticed, I'm sure, to most fans. But as a coach, like puck comes around the wall to a winger, and he's got a big defenseman bearing down on him. What are you doing to get that puck to make a play or to get that puck out? And the ability for players to make those little plays with skill rather than brawn is
in a split second.
Yeah, and you couple that with the speed and size and just used to be great big guys were always not that skilled. The little guys were skilled, and now the great big guys are skilled too.
Yeah. You like this? I mean, do you like the game today?
The speed of the game is the one thing I'd like to see in the game more is some more emotion. You know, and I don't mean fighting emotion, but just harder. You know, basically, I'd like to see playoff hockey all the time, which is not realistic, right? So when you watch a playoff game,
well, you are a defensive-minded coach, Dave. You know, how much did that label drive you crazy? Having coached the teams in Dallas that scored in bunches, did it drive you nuts to hear that?
Well, we had to play defensive here because that's the only way we're going to win. I like to look at it as I look what's in front of me and how we're going to win. Like that's the coach's job is to figure out how you're going to win. And we had solid goaltending, we had veteran defensemen, and we had a grinding group of forwards that you had to stay in games. And we won a lot of close games, and which is not bad because teams that do well in the playoffs, that's how they win. Yeah.
Good coaches, I've always said, coach to their personnel. You got to adapt to your personnel, not make them fit into your system.
That's exactly it. Yeah. Exactly. So I think that's more a media term that goes from, oh, he's an offensive coach, he's a defensive coach. Even in Los Angeles, as assistant coach, I ran the power play. We had the number 1 power play in the league. But then I go and I don't know anything about offense. But,
yeah.
Oh, well.
I want to ask you about this. There's been talk about expansion lately. Some people fear the league would be watered down with more expansion. What do you think about the NHL expanding even more?
Well, I think there's enough quality players out there that they could do that. You know, if they did that, I think what you do is you continue to grow the game.
Yeah.
You know, which is a good thing. It's a really good thing. And you're you know, depending where they're going, you're bringing new markets in, which is business-wise is one aspect of it, but you're selling the game to more people. And I think, you know, I still think, you know, sports is a TV sport, but hockey is still one of the best live.
Yes.
You go and
I think it may be
live,
the best
the more people you can get to see it live, the better off you are. So you're going to grow your product. And there's still some cities out there that I think could really do well. I spent 5 years in Houston in the minor leagues. I think Houston could be a good franchise, you know, an NHL franchise. We used to have exhibition games there, and they would sell them out all the time.
Yeah.
You know, so there is franchises, or there is cities that I think you could still grow the game to and not hurt the game and I think there is enough players. There's enough players there because it's become a worldly game.
It really has. I agree with you.
You know, a worldly game where, you know, you're finding players in, you know, all over Europe and Russia or wherever, and you got North American, United States players continue to grow their percentage of players in the NHL. So there's enough players, and if you can expand and grow the sport, I don't know why you wouldn't.
All right, the last thing I want to ask you about, and he's not here to defend himself. My colleague and your former video coach, Steve Peters. Do you have a favorite PD story, or has anything come to mind?
I think there's too many. My thing about Steve Peters, and I've told people this, you know, from after the first 2 months I worked with him till this day, there's never been a better video coach in the NHL than Steve Peters. He was.
We'll cut this part, Jacob. Okay.
Yeah. He is. Well, I've never seen anybody be as good and be as grumpy all the time.
There it is.
Yeah. Grumpy Petey, but no, you know what? I can't tell you how integral a part he was to our organization here, and he has great stories about the different coaches along the way.
He does.
But he is so good at what he did, and not just to the head coach, like he takes care of everybody. Mm-hmm. But the other thing is he's a great character. Like he's a character, and he's exactly like, if you look at the Phoenix Coyotes, there were some, like there's Petey. Stan Wilson is an unbelievable person, right? Yeah. And then we had Jason Serbus here for a long, like such good people and fun people. They made coming to work every day so much fun. And even though Grumpy Petey was grumpy, he was still a lot of fun to be around.
He's still grumpy on the dark side here in media as well. So
Yeah.
All right.
No, he's a fantastic person. Still stay in touch with him all the time. So you're lucky to have him here.
I agree. Tip, thank you so much for taking the time for driving all the way down to Flagstaff and joining me on another edition of The Focus.
My pleasure.
We all silly like the mayor.